President Biden flies to the Fort Myers area.
Unimaginable storm.
And looks at Hurricane Ian's devastation firsthand. The Marlins say goodbye to their manager and to the 2022 season. These stories and more coming up on Newsbreak.
Hello, South Florida. I'm Kenya Cardone.
I'm Paloma Pimentel. Today is Thursday, October 6, 2022.
Live from the South Florida Media Network's Biscayne-based studios in North Miami, this is SFMN Newsbreak.
The president taking a tour of the tragedy left behind in Fort Myers area after Hurricane Ian. Hundreds of thousands are without power more than a week after Ian struck the Gulf Coast with deadly force.
And now President Biden has seen the destruction in the hard-hit Fort Myers area firsthand. By air and on foot, President Biden and the First Lady witnessing the deadly devastation unleashed by Hurricane Ian firsthand.
Historic, titanic, and unimaginable storm just ripped it to pieces. You got to start from scratch, got to move again. And it's going to take a lot of time, not weeks or months. It's going to take years for everything to get squared away.
The president vowing federal aid will be in Florida for the long haul.
We're not leaving until this gets done.
People who fled Ian's wrath on Sanibel Island have now been able to return by boat.
I'm blown away. This is unbelievable.
Pretty much every structure on the island has some level of damage.
Florida's governor has now ordered the transportation department to get repairs going immediately on the Sanibel Island Bridge and is having linemen airlifted in to restore power.
To be able to start surveying the damage and creating a plan for restoration. I will tell you that I was in Sanibel today. You can go over it in a helicopter and you see damage, but it does not do it justice until you are actually on the ground and you see concrete utility poles sawed off right in half, massive power lines everywhere, massive amounts of debris.
Reporting for South Florida Media Network, I'm Kenya Cardone. And the pictures out of Sanibel are some of the hardest to look at, and officials saying yesterday that every single building on the island was affected.
Today, beauty surpasses the storm as a memorial is built for the victims of Hurricane Ian. Pictures of the victims during Hurricane Ian are displayed on a memorial wall as many gathered to place flowers and pay their respects. Leo Soto, the Miami resident who created the memorial, wishes to foster hope for the loved ones still missing and a sense of strength for the community of Fort Myers.
Student loan forgiveness applications will soon be available for millions. Michelle Morris from our DC Bureau talked to fellow Panthers who say this will give them the financial breathing room that President Biden promised.
This week, the Biden administration announced that the student loan debt relief plan is in full effect. If eligible, millions of Americans will be able to cancel up to $20,000 in federal student debt. According to a recent report by Education Data Initiative, Florida residents have a total of about $100 billion in student loan debt. The average borrower in the state has close to $40,000 in loan debt, and over 45% of them are under the age of 35.
When the pandemic hit, it got really, really hard, and I had to prioritize whether, I was going to pay for my rent or I was going to pay for my school. Having this relief is a little bit better because now I know, I'm still able to stay on track and I don't have to worry about carrying the student loan.
In a recent tweet, President Biden says he is keeping his campaign promise to give working and middle-class families breathing room as they prepare to resume federal student loan payments in January 2023.
This is something that can be geared towards something else, like mortgage, toward rent, toward food, basic necessities. It really takes a load off of people that do have that, cloud over their head of, what it seems like never-ending debt.
The debt cancellation includes up to $10,000 in federal student loans and up to $20,000 of relief for Pell Grant recipients to borrowers earning less than $125,000 a year, or $250,000 for couples who file their taxes jointly. This includes the Parent Plus loan programs that millions of families have used on behalf of their dependent undergraduate students. Although the deadline for the student loan forgiveness program is December 31st of 2023, Department of Education officials recommend that borrowers apply by this mid-November in order to receive relief before the federal payment pause expires. In Washington, D.C., reporting for South Florida Media Network, Michelle Morris.
The White House is expected today to unveil progress reports on its fight against the climate crisis. The reports are expected to describe the growth of climate efforts on a federal level, such as climate education for agency staff and sustainability plans in departments. The Biden administration is set on explaining climate change investments and its future role amid weather disasters.
The Miami Marlins end their season with an impressive win over the Atlanta Braves here at home. The two teams were tied in the 4th inning, but the Marlins took the momentum of the game when they scored 2 runs in the next inning and 5 runs in the 6th inning. The final score was Braves 9, Marlins 12.
The victory allowed the Marlins players to send their manager off with a win. As the network's Anna Joseph reports, it was Don Mattingly's last game with the team.
The Marlins ending their season here at home against the Atlanta Braves, this being Don Mattingly's last game with the Marlins, and the Fish are looking to end their season with a win against the #1 team in the NL East. A sad day for the Marlins today as the Fish end their season, but not quite all sad as Mattingly goes out with a win in his final game as manager. Though the team did not make it to the playoffs, they indeed have one player to celebrate. John Birdie shined last night, ending the season as the stolen base champ, leading the MLB with 41 steals while playing only 102 games this season. Some players didn't even make it out the dugout, as I explained to this young fan that pitcher Sandy Alcantara wouldn't be out. Watch as he frowns to hear the news. But like the rest of the Fish fans, he still came to enjoy the game, but he's excited for next season.
Sad how they didn't make the playoffs, but I'm excited. Hopefully the new season with the new coach, they will do better and stuff.
The Marlins getting in that one last win of the season. Sad to see them go, but the #1 question pressing during the offseason will be, who will be the next coach to get the team in shape in time for next season? I'm Anya Joseph, South Florida Media Network.
Things just got even stranger for an Illinois neighborhood who has entered the upside down. After neighbors complained shutting it down earlier this week, the controversial Stranger Things display is back on after local officials okayed the Plainfield's front yard. The full display will be up Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening, but the lights and sounds will be turned off during the week.
Some first-time astronauts launching into space from Florida.
That's still ahead, and so is this story.
The house is not livable, and it's terrible.
A 99-year-old woman who lost her home to Hurricane Ian says she's not ready to give up. Newsbreak will be back in just 2 minutes.
Jordan knows he shouldn't eat this entire bowl of nachos, but tonight he's earned that right because a few hours ago in the middle of happy hour, he recognized a sign, not from the gods or a bolt of lightning, but from a double heart, a kissy face, and a 4th ha in ha ha ha. That's when Jordan knew he was buzzed. So when it was time to go, he got a ride home instead of driving. Be a legend like Jordan. Recognize your buzzed warning signs and get a ride home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you and we'll figure it out."
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking, let's go. You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
A 99-year-old Sarasota woman says she's ready to rebuild after losing her home to Hurricane Ian. She's not giving up even though the storm made her home unlivable.
As reporters Kelsey Cairns tells us, the woman is a former cadet nurse who served in World War II and knows a thing or two about overcoming obstacles.
Meet Thelma Goulden. She lives here in the Oakwood Manor mobile home community in Sarasota. Hurricane Ian tearing through her neighborhood, and now this is what is left of her home.
The house is not livable, and it's terrible.
She's 99 years old and lives on her own. She lost her husband nearly 2 years ago. For 30 years, this was the place she called home.
And it's awful. I can't explain the feeling you have.
But she is a survivor. She came down with COVID twice during the pandemic, was even hospitalized, and prevailed. She survived a stroke. She recovered from open heart surgery. The woman cannot catch a break, and losing her home is just another hurdle.
Until it hits you, you don't know.
And despite hardship, she's not giving up hope. A matriarch of her community, friends and neighbors have always been inspired by Thelma's resilience.
I hope I'm like you when I get your age.
Perhaps her resilience is a skill she acquired while serving her country. She was a cadet nurse who served during World War II.
We covered the home front. We replaced the nurses that had to go.
She was called to serve back in 1943, and now Thelma says she's been called to serve again, this time cleaning up her neighborhood.
We love this lady. We sure do.
Her friends banding together to rebuild their community. Reporting in Sarasota, Florida, I'm Kelsey Cairns.
History in the making as SpaceX and NASA launched 4 astronauts on the Crew 5 mission yesterday. The rocket and spacecraft, which lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carried a crew of 2 NASA astronauts and an astronaut from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and a cosmonaut from the Russian Space Agency. The spacecraft is set to dock this evening at the International Space Station.
That's all the time we have for Newsbreak. I'm Paloma Pimentel.
And I'm Kenya Cardone. Get more news anytime at sfmn.fiu.edu.